Hello, my name is Chad Wooters and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how you can quickly build a body of work and improve the quality of your pictures with techniques taken from my book, Fast and Flexible. In it, I present an organizing framework of 4 oil painting techniques. This framework neatly summarizes the best practices of historic painting methods such as the Flemish, Viennese, and Spanish schools of painting. There are 2 methods for depicting form. The first is vague to clear, and the second is simple to complex. In the vague to clear, you start with rough tonal values, clouds, fuzzy. In that case, you use a very big brush. For the simple to complex, you're doing outlines, and you would use a very small brush. So let's start with the vague to clear. If you're working from vague to clear, you're going to just kind of make a rough outline of the shape of the apple. The tonal value, once again, I'm just real rough. Okay. Over the course of time, I'll gradually refine this image until you get a very basic idea of what it is. Now, if you're working from simple to complex, you take a much different approach. In that case, you would basically say, I want a round apple. It has a little bit more of a base, maybe with a bump in it. I know that it has an area in the top where it's dimpled, and it has a stem of some kind. So as you can see, you're working the outlines, gradually making it more of what you really want it to be. So you might cut the shape in at that point. You might also decide that you want to know where the shadows are falling. So for instance, you might just kind of quickly indicate for your own self, when you're going to be refining the picture later, where you might want your highlights and whatnot. You can see that there's a big difference between these 2 approaches. In the one case, it's very rough, very fuzzy. In the other, you've defined the outline. You might even say, define where you want the shadow. As time goes on, gradually refine that. And when you can even then you probably, between phases, will remove some of the edges. Once again, this is all about depicting form. Gosh, I love to mess with this stuff. You know, once you start painting, you just can't stop. There are 2 basic approaches to color. The first is to approach it from a tonal value point of view, meaning you're more interested in the lightness or darkness of the subject matter. The second approach is a hue approach, where you're more concerned with the hue of the objects, the bright, intense colors. I'm going to start with the hue. For instance, let's say you were doing a portrait under incandescent light. We know that the light is very warm, gives off a yellowy glow. We also know that, as a part of the brain, that simultaneous contrast in the shadow areas appear to be very purple. So this is something that the Impressionists used. So let's say you're drawing a portrait. The side of the face facing the light is going to be a bright yellow. And once again, this is a hue approach. We're not necessarily working on saturation, and we're just working the underpainting. You'll also notice that my habit is to generally use the vague to clear approach as opposed to the simple to complex for depicting form. The shadow side. Okay. And eye sockets. As you can see, okay, underneath the nose, you can see the shape kind of take care of it. And gradually, okay, now I'm going to introduce a little bit of a different, just so you can see. There we go. Okay, so that's a color approach, where you're using the hue of the object as your primary means of now I've started to introduce tonal value, but you get the idea. Okay, now let's take a look at if I were to do the same thing from a tonal value point of view. I would still use basic paint color, like a mid-tone there. Define the parts that are in the light. And then rather than using a different color, I would use the same color, which is a yellow, in the dark areas. As you can see, one relies almost entirely on color for its effect. The other relies exclusively on tonal value for its effect. If you take the two strategies for depicting form, vague to clear and simple to complex, and add to it the approach to color, whatever your priority is, whether your priority is hue or tonal values, you can see that this creates a matrix of 4 different techniques. So you have the technique of vague to clear with a hue priority. You have a technique of simple to complex, also with a hue priority. Or you can have a tone priority using the vague to clear method. That's tonal realism. Or you can have a simple to complex approach that focuses and has its priority on tonal values. Every historical method falls within one of these 4 approaches. A detailed presentation of the 4 oil painting techniques is beyond the scope of this video. That's why it's my hope that you'll check out my book, Fast and Flexible, on Amazon.com and decide if it's right for you.